Hello and welcome to LA Currents. I'm Ann Pulice. Our next guest is dedicated to transforming the streets of Los Angeles through ending homelessness. Dr. Lecia Adams Kellum is the incoming CEO of the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, appointed by unanimous vote in January. Welcome, Dr. Lecia. We're glad to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All right, let's start with, you've been the president and CEO of social services organization St. Joseph Center, and you are recognized as an expert, as a leader in homeless services throughout Los Angeles. What led you originally to work with the homeless?
I really have to go back to the beginning. I have family members who are really dedicated to volunteerism and community service. My dad was always making meals for folks in the community, and I just always had a heart for people who were less fortunate. And that eventually became the folks around me and in my universe who were unhoused. Started really after graduate school of working with kids who were coming out of foster care, many of which were finding themselves unhoused after emancipation. And after that, I started at St. Joseph Center 15 years ago. And it's really become a really important area of work for me.
Now, you're a SoCal native.
That's
right?
true.
You've been here, and so you've seen the homeless situation kind of ebb and flow, go through changes. How did that affect your decision to continue working with the homeless?
Well, yes, you're right. I am a native, and I won't say when I was born here in LA, but I will tell you that the streets just didn't look the way they do today when I grew up. And honestly, it's been really sad to see the erosion of our community, the growing number of people who can't afford rents and to have a home that they feel safe in. It's really deteriorated over the years. I am over 50, I'll give you that clue. And so it really has changed.
Yeah.
And it's quite sad to see what's happened to our community. So it has definitely inspired me to want to do something and to make a difference and have an impact on this crushing crisis.
I love that you say it inspired you, it continues to inspire you, because it could get very depressing. It could be a very sad thing to have to go to work every day when you know sort of what you're working with. And, you know, change is very slow, no matter where you're working. But you seem to have an upbeat look and an outlook, as if, you know, this is something that you're tackling and you have every belief that you can help mitigate the change, right?
Well, that's right. I think it has something to do with purpose. I really believe that we're all called to a certain body of work. And with that purpose, I think you can have impact.
Yes.
And certainly I am inspired every day. It's heartbreaking as well to see the amount of human suffering that's out there every day. And as the mayor has called this a crisis, and the Board of Supervisors have agreed that it is a crisis. And so it's hard to work very hard on a very severe problem like this and not see it get better visually.
Yeah.
And that's really what I hope will happen in the coming months and years.
Your appointment to LAHSA was supported by Mayor Karen Bass, as well as other supervisors. You were surrounded by a group of very strong women in your appointment. That's a lot of support from a lot of higher-ups. And together, what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, I believe the only way we're going to address homelessness effectively is if we do it together as a community. Knowing that I'm supported by such an amazing group of women, female leaders who have been out there for years and years dedicating themselves to community service, volunteerism, and change is amazing. It's inspiring. Yep. It's anxiety-provoking. I don't want to let them down at all. And I'm dedicated to doing whatever I can. But certainly having this level of support reminds me that we're all on the same page. We're in this together. We're locking arms, as the mayor has many times said. And I believe we can get it done. I think this is a special moment where we are focused, we're leaning in, And we know we can't stop now. We just can't.
You said business as usual is unacceptable. You said that earlier in a press conference, and I went back and listened to it again. I love that thought. How do you implement that once in the position of CEO of LAHSA?
Well, I think if we remember that we're in a state of emergency, it will help us think differently about the way we're doing the work. Business as usual just means we get up every day, we look at our agendas, we focus on the meetings at hand, we are understanding of what our capacity is today. I think when we are in a state of emergency, we have to get rid of all of those models and say we have to do whatever it takes. We have to scale, we have to move swiftly, we have to stay up late, we have to work through the weekends. We have to do whatever it takes to make a change, and we have to do it now with a sense of urgency.
Absolutely. You worked closely with Mayor Bass in the first few weeks of her administration. You cleared encampments in Venice as well as Hollywood. Residents and business owners were very critical of the city, saying that it took way too long to react, which I think is natural. What is your reaction to that criticism?
Well, I understand the criticism and frustration. I think there are many people who have seen the level of human suffering and have just wanted someone to finally call attention to it in the way that Mayor Bass has and called out the crisis and the emergency. And I think in the end, the business community, the housed residents, the unhoused neighbors in Venice and Hollywood said thank you, ultimately. And they were very appreciative of the pace and swiftness of our response. And I think there's more to come.
Ultimately, you said. So I think that's one of the challenges, is getting through, doing the job, having the criticisms, but then ultimately you see it as a good thing, and you did what needed to be done. Now, you helped lead the Inside Safe program. Explain a little bit more about what the Inside Safe program is.
Well, it's the mayor's program that I helped develop that's really focusing on the crisis of encampments that are on the streets of Los Angeles. And we've all seen them proliferate over the last few years, particularly during COVID. And we are leaning into that crisis, connecting with people in those very chronic encampments throughout the city, engaging people, inspiring them to, one, say yes to housing now, and also to a future connection and resource that will help them connect to permanent housing. And we believe that it's not just about moving in and saying, hey, we have a motel bed tonight. It's about a life change that's promised. It's about a future opportunity to get indoors for good, inside safe.
So how many people approximately, as of this taping, have you moved off the streets through the Inside Safe program?
About 356.
Okay.
As of today.
And so they've gone from outdoor encampments to motels.
To motels, and some of them into permanency. We have over 25 or so who are actually in permanent housing as of today.
Wow. How do you feel that entire program went?
Well, it's still ongoing. I mean, really, it's important for people to understand that Inside Safe is just at the starting blocks. We are going to keep growing the program, building infrastructure, and learning from mistakes that we've made along the way. We have a lot of scaling to do, especially to reach the mayor's goals, and we will. And so we are starting, slowly, and the numbers are small today, but they will probably double in the coming weeks.
So there are people out on the street, social worker type of people, helping the unhoused and offering them this, a stay in a motel, telling them what the parameters are of the Inside Safe program? How does that work?
Yes, it's a great question. So we start off by really canvassing the encampment and connecting with people, determining their interest in coming indoors, and most say yes, I will tell you that.
Okay, yeah.
And then we determine what level of support and services folks will need, We set up a zone by zone approach, especially if we are tackling several streets at a time. And we let folks know that we have resources and that we're going to support them. Then what we call our multidisciplinary teams go out and connect with people one by one, really connecting with their needs. We have nurses on those teams, people with alcohol and drug addiction training and experience, folks with lived experience as well. And so that very diverse team, often of experts, of people who've lived in encampments and been unhoused themselves, really connect on a heart to heart level and inspire people to say yes. So that canvassing and connection happens. But it's important for folks to know that we're not going out into those encampments initially, for the first time without knowing folks there. We are led by service providers that have been in those encampments over months, sometimes over years. And so they're coming in, offering support. They're known to the people generally in those encampments, and most of them have said yes.
Wow. That's inspirational right there. The years-long work that it takes in order to help someone, I think that sometimes goes unseen, For the folks who do say yes to the Inside Safe recipients, they find themselves housed for a temporary amount of time. Approximately how long is that stay?
Well, we know that it's taking upwards of 6 months often to connect someone who's unhoused to a permanent housing resource. So that's how long we sense that people will be in interim, we call interim housing, or the motel stays. Some have been much shorter. As I said, there are about 20 or so, 25 folks who are in permanent housing, and that was for them just 3 or 4 weeks in interim housing before being permanently housed.
That's amazing. How did they get do you offer services then once they are in the motel? I assume there's follow-up services saying, here are some other options that can help you be permanently housed.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really part of our promise, that this isn't just about a motel stay. It's about a change for them. It's about a change in their lives, and a permanent housing resource is attached to that work. And so, yes, we have case managers and what we call navigators, and folks that help people secure the documentation that they need to secure a lease. And we begin that important work of connecting them to permanent housing almost from day one.
Now, LAHSA was created about 30 years ago, okay? And its role has shifted many times in those years. Some leaders had a vision that the agency would actually be building houses, that some leaders said, we'll just provide some services to the homeless. It's sort of been a vision depending on whose it is. The vision has changed. It all makes for a lot of contention. And ultimately, asking the question, who decides what the responsibilities of LAHSA are? Going into this position, do you know what those responsibilities are, or will those be changing as you kind of take over the position and make it your own?
Well, I sense that they will be clarified. And you're right. I mean, a joint powers authority that came out of a conflict has probably had to sit with that and be representative of that strained relationship. I hope to build a coordinated, collaborative, productive partnership between the city and county. I think this is a time, especially in this moment of collaboration that we're seeing between the city and county. I think this is our time to come out of that strained period to one of deep collaboration and progress. And so, yes, I see that I will have to help re-envision what we are about at LAHSA, being very productive and focused, strategic, and responsive.
Is LAHSA responsible for actual decision making, or will you be getting your information from both city and county and have to sort of sift through it that way?
I think there's probably a mix in any collaboration.
Sure.
There's a fair amount of decision making that needs to be made, and it has to come out of data, and it has to be informed by good practice. But I think we also need to be hearing from leaders at the city and county level to really know what our next steps need to be. And I think that's going to be very critical to our success.
In watching this take place and having you take over LAHSA and sort of take on that new role, I always wonder what are the first steps, and then what are the long-term effects you would like to see in your role as the CEO?
Well, I think early on, I'll need to listen. But because we are in a crisis, I'll need to move very swiftly. Certainly, like any good leader, I've created my list of what I want to do in the first 100 days. And I believe that it will put us on a path to really identifying our strengths and leaning into our purpose as an agency. But I think there are some systemic changes that we'll need to make as well. And we'll need to be listening to our city and county partners to determine what those need to be really effective in ensuring that we decrease street homelessness and that we also decrease the number of people falling into homelessness and losing their homes and the amount of poverty that we're seeing in the city as well. So there's a lot of work for us to do. And I'm excited and thrilled to see where we go with this.
Long term, what do you hope your legacy will be? Looking at it, and this is hard to answer, looking at it sort of coming into the position, you must have some thoughts on, if I could end this in any way, many, many years from now, this is how I want people to remember what I did here at LAHSA.
Right. Well, I want to be able to be a part of a mechanism that significantly reduced street homelessness in Los Angeles. I hesitate saying that I end street homelessness, but I'd like to be a part of the mechanism that makes that possible, that's not a far-off vision. I'd like to be a part of a system that is collaborative, that really does bring the city and county together. Ultimately, I'd like my legacy at LAHSA to ensure that we are the leaders of a homeless delivery system that's effective and that folks understand what LAHSA's role is and that we are operating in excellence.
You mentioned that coming in, you want to play on the strengths of LAHSA, and then, of course, improve in whatever ways you see fit. What are some of the strengths that you see going in? What does LAHSA bring to you?
Well, LAHSA has a lot of infrastructure. I think what it needs is focus in where we should put our energy and attention. I think that there's a lot of different, as you said earlier, ideas around what activities we should be engaged in. But I don't think you can be effective when you're too spread out and your strategies are across 25 different areas of focus. I think we need to be very critical and determined to focus our energy so that we can be effective and focused and use our resources wisely. And so I think, again, our infrastructure can be leveraged to make a difference. I really believe that. We have an investment that we receive both from the county, from the state, from the federal government, and we need to amass that, and we need to be good stewards, and we need to make sure that we are enhancing systems and not a barrier. So I believe that the service delivery system that focuses on our service providers is an amazing strength. As you know, I've been a service provider, and there are so many people who are in that space who are inspired to do great work, who are working night and day. They know what it takes to address homelessness and end homelessness, and we need to leverage those great ideas and put them to work.
You touched on how LAHSA was funded. Is it just those three entities, county, city, and state?
Well, that about accounts for most. But, Measure H is an important part of how we know that LAHSA is funded through the county of Los Angeles. And so with all of that taken together, there's a lot of funding streams. Many departments within the city and county flow through and inform the work that LAHSA does. But that shouldn't cause us to be scattered in our focus and strategy. We can bring all those funding streams together, and I think especially around the best practice work that we are committed to doing, I think we can make that look a lot cleaner, and I think the outcomes more evident.
Better efficiency, maybe?
I think there's an efficiency issue, and I think, again, with so many hardworking folks at LAHSA, I think we just need to clarify and prioritize what it is we are destined to do, purpose to do, and get really, really, really good at that.
About how many people currently work for LAHSA?
And there's upwards of about 700 or so folks at LAHSA. It's quite an army.
It is.
and I think that is one of our strengths, and it can be a weakness if that body of folks is not focused and targeted in the ways that will make us effective. I'm inspired by how hard the folks work at LAHSA, and I look forward to working with them to really streamline our practices and get really strategic about our work.
Mayor Bass said she wants to see LAHSA take more of a decisive role, more decision making. How do you interpret that for yourself? You said a few times it's a little intimidating. There's a lot coming at you right now. But how do you interpret that as far as playing a decisive role as the head of LAHSA?
Well, I totally agree. Mm-hmm. I think that the head of LAHSA and the role of LAHSA is critical, and we should be the leaders around what the system needs, and we will have to make decisions. We can't shy away from determining direction and strategy, and then we need to stand up whatever the system requires and get done what needs to get done. And if we need to make mid-course corrections, we need to be ready to do that as well. We can't be afraid to make mistakes. We have to be innovative and progressive, and I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about the support and belief that the mayor has in me as a leader, and the fact that she's ready to have LAHSA be decisive and focused and a part of the decision-making process.
I love the terms innovative and progressive. Something clearly needs to be done to change the homeless and unhoused situation in Los Angeles. I think it does need to be innovative and progressive. How do you come up with that model? Or there's probably not just one, right? It's got to be as it is out on the streets per person. There's got to be something different for each person.
Well, I think the needs of each individual must be taken into consideration. But I think there are focused strategies that can bring us all together. Inside Safe is one example, where we're going into the encampments and doing something we do every day, or the outreach teams do every day, is to connect with folks and offer housing. But it's the type of housing. It's the model that we're using. It's housing now and a promise of housing that will be more permanent. Those two pieces taken together, delivered by people with lived experience and folks who really get it, I think makes a difference. And that's the kind of innovation and insight that we need to bring to this work.
I am interested how it happens sort of on the other end. The motels that the unhoused are staying at temporarily, how did that relationship start?
Well, that's a big part of the work, and really it's a part that the community can help us with as well. We are out connecting with motels every day, motel owners, and connecting with them around what they can do to make a difference in this work, and opening their doors or setting aside rooms, even master leasing when possible, to make sure that we can get people in immediately. And part of the work of planning an encampment endeavor is making sure we have the rooms set aside. So we're needing rooms every day. For those listeners who can help, give us a call. And then we're also always lining up the permanent housing resource. And as you know, there's not enough affordable permanent housing available. So we need folks to rent to people who we're bringing indoors, and to be open to taking Section 8 and other housing vouchers that will make a real difference in this population's ability to remain housed.
So when someone does go to a motel from an encampment, is it close to the neighborhood? Is there a geographic sort of area that you're looking for?
It's a good question. We attempt in every way possible to find motels that are near the encampment. Some communities just don't have affordable motels. They just don't have that infrastructure. So we do have to go to neighboring communities at times. But we do our best to keep people close to where they're used to being and where they go to doctors' offices and so forth. But that, again, is difficult when we don't have the infrastructure in various communities.
And what about transportation for these folks? That you mentioned going to the doctor's office or, you know, a million other things that come up in one's day. Is there something that sort of accounts for helping them get on the bus or get a ride or however it works?
It's a great question. When we do the encampment endeavor, we have been using the Department of Transportation with the City of Los Angeles to get people from the encampments to the motels, along with vehicles that the outreach teams have. So that's really great. Once people move into the motels, the case managers and service providers often offer transport to doctors' offices and various visits and activities and appointments that they have. So that's that piece that we try to, respond to. And then making sure people can have, bus tokens, et cetera. So that's all part of what it means to deliver services ongoing.
It's a lot of work. You're up for the challenge, though. It was such a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you nothing but the very best of luck in your new job, your new position there at LAHSA, and hope to see you back here again soon with some positive updates that I know you'll be able to bring.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Lecia Adams Kellum, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us. This has been LA Currents. I'm Ann Pulice.